And we continue with the Christmas series with Advent in Review. Advent just used to pass me by. I never gave it a thought. As a child, you'd see the wreath in church and just think, oh, cool. They get to light another candle this Sunday. And there would be all these poinsettias festooned all over the place that it was just a sea of red near the altar. In class, you'd have that little advent calendar perched in the corner, and you'd open the door each day, and there'd be a face. A random face, well, to me anyway, peering back at you. And that was another day in Advent before Christmas came and everything was better. Because, as we all know, Christmas makes everything better. The liturgical colors also passed me by. The only color I ever noticed was green, but that was during ordinary time, that period between Pentecost and Advent that was just ordinary. Now, I know the reason behind the name Ordinary Time, but it felt ordinary to me. I mean, there was nothing going on. Nothing happened. It was like the summer break of the church year. You just lounged about getting ready for the feast of Christ the King and then Advent. And even then, Advent just seemed uneventful because it wasn't the main show. Now, Lent was a different thing. Lent in itself was an event because you actually had stuff to do, and with fasting and figuring out what was the best thing to give up for that season. But Advent was just there. Was it all filler? Was it just there to take up space? There certainly was nothing ordinary about Advent, unlike ordinary time. And the Feast of Christ the King marked the end of the church year, and Advent was the beginning of a new one. And that week in between, the poor thing that was left out in no man's land trying to fend for itself. But it's still ordinary time, and it felt ordinary, but there was nothing ordinary about it because usually Christ the King fell around the Thanksgiving holiday. And we all know there was nothing ordinary about that. We've timed everything in sync with the secular calendar, and that gives it zest, it applies meaning. It gives it some pizzazz, something that by itself doesn't seem much to jump over. Well, unless you take into account the feast days, but really? In this modern era, who gives a toss about the major and minor feast days? But Advent this year shouldn't just be there. If me watching church services online from Ascension, Holy Comforter, and Duke Chapel have taught me anything, it's that Advent is part of the Christian experience. It's a wonderful time of year and wonderful by its own merits. We don't need Christmas music playing ad nauseum from 102.9 The Lake or those tacky Christmas sales you see from all those stores. It can be great on its own, and it is and has been and will be. And sure, Christmas is the main show, and it makes everything better. But we ought to give it the reverence and attention it deserves, not relegate it to the second-tier B-list celebrity holidays. It's wonderful in its own right. That's one of the reasons why this year I decided to write and release an essay/story during the Advent period. It's my way of celebrating Advent. I noticed it hasn't gotten too many views, but that's alright. Just putting it out there for the world to see is enough, and maybe one day it'll catch on.